Kira, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much, Naomi. And yeah, I'm just going to give a quick overview as to the kind of background that sits behind this grant call for proposals. The IUCN Species Survival Commission, for any of you that aren't aware, works on an approach that we call the species conservation cycle, which covers a 3-stage cycle of assessment, planning, and action. So we approach species conservation by first looking at assessing the extinction threat faced by species for inclusion on the red list of threatened species, to look at the relative risk of a species going extinct. We then work to bring stakeholders together to create conservation action plans, which are particularly important for this grant cycle. So those action plans aim to look at what are the priority initiatives that are needed to address the recovery or long-term conservation of a given species or group of species. And the specialist groups are usually the custodians of those plans. And on the webinar website, on the RFP website, you'll find a link to all of the different published action plans of the IUCN SSC. Those plans, we then work with partners and governments and our expert networks around the world to mobilize into action. And that's where, again, this RFP is particularly important, because these grants are focused on doing exactly that, helping you all as applicants to take initiatives identified as priorities in those plans and then mobilize them into actions that lead to or support species recovery efforts. Now, one thing that I'm sure will come up in the questions is that for many species, action plans don't yet exist. There's obviously millions of species around the world, and we're doing our best to assess and plan, but there are lots of species for which current action plans don't exist. If that's the case, it doesn't mean that you can't apply for one of these grants. It just means you have to reach out to one of the specialist groups. Naomi, do you want to? Yeah, great. It just means you have to reach out to the relevant specialist group and ask for a letter of endorsement to acknowledge that even though there's not a plan in place for this species, the project and initiative you're proposing in your application is in fact identified as a top priority for that species. So this is our assess, plan, act cycle, and what the cycle then does is leads back into reassessment. So we're hoping that, again, as these actions are mobilized through things like this call for proposals and your projects that you're thinking of submitting, they lead eventually, if not immediately, to shifts in the conservation status or extinction likelihood in those species. So when we reassess, we can see what projects are working and driving genuine change in the potential of a species surviving. So that's an overview to the approach that the SSC takes for species conservation, and also why this partnership with National Geographic and Segre Foundation is so important in making sure that those plans really do get translated into action through working with the real superstars of the whole cycle, you guys on the ground driving these important conservation initiatives. So thanks, Naomi.
Thank you, Kira. Okay, as Kira mentioned already, this is part of the goal of this grant opportunity, and it was launched in 2018 in partnership with Nat Geo, and after Segre Foundation joined us early 2019. We run in 2 grant cycles per year. One is in April and the other one is in October. As you probably know, the April round was postponed because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So for this year, we will have just 1 round in October, and the upcoming deadline is the 21st of this month. To show you a little bit the results that we have so far, we have had 6 rounds of this round, with more than 450 applications received, from where we have found 90 proposals, which translate in more than $3 million allocated in these projects across our diverse range of taxa and geographic distribution around the world. It's also important to mention that from these 90 proposals, almost half of the grantees are SSC members, which is great because we are supporting their priorities, but also there are people that is not part of our network so far, but they want to work with us implementing conservation actions that are priorities for our network. Regarding the goals or the goal of this RFP, we want to implement conservation action to help further diversity decline, and implementing conservation plans for the species, or group of species. We support priorities of the IUCN species conservation plans, as well as conservation actions that are endorsed by the relevant specialist groups. This means that you can apply even though the conservation or the formal conservation plan doesn't exist. We require that all applications include a letter of endorsement signed by the chair, regional or thematic leader of the relevant specialist group. This means that even if the IUCN conservation plan exists, you have to get the endorsement letter to apply for this grant program. You can find the template for this endorsement letter and all the information about this in our website. We also want to fund proposals across a range of geographic and taxonomy range around the world. So we want to see, or we would like to see, more applications from underrepresented taxa. And in this specific case, that means that marine and freshwater species, plants, reptiles, and amphibians. And also we would like to see more applications from critical endangered species. We also give priority to proposals led by someone from the country where the fieldwork is being conducted. In that sense, we require that all applications include at least a local team member in place. This is more or less the goal that we are pursuing with this grant. So now I will pass to Luisa, who will explain a little bit about the review process. Welcome, Luisa.
Thanks, Naomi. Hi, everybody. So as Naomi mentioned, I'm Senior Program Officer for Wildlife and National Geographic. So I oversee the grants that are related to species conservation and research, including this RFP. So in terms of review process, how we work in Geographic is that we receive the applications and we do a first cut that is done by the program officer. In that first cut, we look for clarity and accuracy, the feasibility of the project, and the requirements are met. In the case of this specific RFP, the endorsement letter is a critical component of that. But we also look at that you have a local collaborator, if you are not from there, that the local collaborator actually has an active role in the project. So it's not like the person that is going to help you to get, permits or the driver. It has to be a researcher, a conservationist, or a student that you are training in country. After that first cut, the applications that move forward go to external review. We have a pool of international experts that look into the projects, and they give comments more focus on the technical part of the projects and make recommendations for funding. After that, that comes back to Geographic and is reviewed internally by, again, the program officer and our international team. And once that those scores and comments are consolidating, we make a recommendation that goes to the Committee for Research and Exploration, and which is our external panel of scientific experts. And then based on their recommendation and our recommendations, it goes to approval by the executive team in National Geographic. Next. So as you see, our peer review process is very rigorous. So it is important that you do the best that you can to just kind of like meet every single of our requirements, and that you put the effort into building these applications. just kind of to provide a few tips of, what not to do or what are the most common reasons for declinations. As I said in the first cut, when it comes to requirements, for this particular RFP, the endorsement letter, there is no way around about it. If you don't have the endorsement letter, the application will be declined immediately. If you are requesting funds for assessments or evaluation, as Kira and Naomi mentioned, this specific RFP is for implementation of conservation actions, either because they are recommendation for the conservation action plans or because you have the endorsement letter and the endorsement letter just kind of like says that these activities that you're gonna do are fundamental for the conservation of these species. So anything that is assessments or evaluation, we don't fund that. And the other reason is the PI doesn't have the proper experience to do the project. That's something that we look at it carefully. So just be sure that the principal investigator really have the experience and knowledge and the expertise to implement the project. In terms of the project itself, sometimes what kills a project the fastest is that the project is too big. Sometimes I see that if the conservation action plan exists, people want to do everything that is in the conservation action plan. Keep in mind the scope of these projects, is between $30,000 and $50,000 maximum is what you can request. So you cannot do everything. So what are the specific activities that you actually can do with what you are requesting? Sometimes the project is too big and too all over the place or is unrealistic, and that is also a very big reason to decline the projects. The goals and objectives are very important, so they need to be very clear and they need to be smart. That's also something that can kill a project very quickly. Our external reviewers focus a lot on the goals and objectives, but also in the methodology. So we have a limit number of, we have a limit on the words, the number of words that you can add into or characters per section in the application. But the place where we have the most spaces in the methodology, because we ask people to just explain the methodology very carefully and provide plenty of information there. We look for measures of success. So there's a section of outcomes and outputs. You need to be very clear. How you know that you are going to be successful, how you know that you actually completed what you said that you were going to complete. So that is very important that it goes there. The budget needs to be very specific. You need to provide justifications for your request. And please don't go over $50,000 because it's not, that's one reason to actually decline. Sometimes people think that if I try to put, 100,000, why not? That actually will cause that, we decline your application. And we have very detailed budget guidelines. There are things that we don't cover. And so please just go to the website and go to prepare the proposal section. There is plenty of information there for how to complete the proposal, what is expected, and all the restrictions in terms of budget, in terms of places where we cannot work, which are very few, and any other requirements. So just be sure that you go through those instructions.
Thank you, Luisa. Thanks so much also, Kira, for your wonderful interventions. Now, and following the program, we will start with the question and answer session based on your participation in the chat. If we have a large number of questions, we will select some of them, and after, if we have time, we will continue with the other ones. Otherwise, for those questions that we cannot answer today, we will prepare a frequently asked questions file that we will share with you in the upcoming days. So let's start with the first question. So let's see what we have. As an SSC member, can I apply? I'm a specialist myself and also a young conservationist waiting to apply for this fund option.
Yes, sorry, I'll jump in. Yes, as an SSC member, of course, you can apply. If you are if you're the specialist group chair, you will need to get a co-chair or a regional vice chair or another leader within another recognized leader within the group to sign the endorsement letter, just because it's not appropriate for you to sign your own endorsement letter. But if you're not the chair of the group, yes, by all means, you follow the same process that we've outlined for anyone. You don't. The flip side of this is you do not have to be an SSE member to apply. So yes, the grant is open to SSE members and non-members as long as the project meets the criteria of the grant that Luisa has just gone through, and of course, as part of that includes the endorsement letter.
Thank you, Kira. Can successful applicants reapply for future funds?
So the short answer to that is yes, but a couple of things. One is that you need to close your current grant first. You cannot apply for another grant as you have one active. So if you have completed the grant and you have submitted all your requirements, so the midterm review, the report, the final report, and all the media assets and financial report, then you can apply. However, we don't do exactly follow-up grants. So even if you're working in the same species, the project cannot be exactly the same. It cannot be for, just doing the continuation of the same activities. Now, if you, as a result of your previous grant, you are moving to like another set of activities or another step in the activities that you're doing, then you can apply. But I would say that the project has to be really, really good for us to consider it, because we normally don't do like the follow-up grants. We do more like seed money. So it is possible, but it is, the requirements are very high. Let's say that.
Great. Okay, next question is, you say that you want to see more proposals from underrepresented geographies and taxa. Does it mean that we should not apply if we are submitting proposals for normal geographies or taxa?
No, that's not what it means. Ultimately, we want the best projects, and the best projects will make it at the end. Now, we see way less applications for like the taxonomic groups that we mentioned before, like freshwater and marine species, plants, amphibian and reptiles. We see a lot of mammals and a lot of birds. So that doesn't mean that you cannot apply if you're working with those species. It just means that we are just looking to get more applications from the other ones. But at the end of the day, the quality of the application is what is going to make it to the end, not necessarily that the taxonomic group is here or there.
Great, thanks for the clarification. So let's go to the next one. Will I be eligible to apply for another Nat Geo grant while holding this grant? I think you explained it a little bit, but if you can expand.
Yeah, no. So for National Geographic, for all grants, you have to close your current grant to apply to another one. There are some calls that are internal for explorers, and those have different requirements. But the ones that are our regular grants that are for the public in general, those you have to close your first grant before you can apply to another one.
Exactly. Can you specify the regions or countries for being considered?
We cover projects everywhere in the world. We have restrictions because of diplomatic reasons, like we cannot fund things in Iran, Sudan, Syria. Well, China is out of the question right now because different reasons, but you can see the list of places where we don't fund. Cuba is very complicated because it needs an OFAC permit, which are very hard to get. So just look at it, but we don't really have any restrictions where you can work except for those that are for diplomatic reasons.
Great. What is the minimum maximum of persons that should be in the project?
So we expect that, also we fund the PI and the individual. The PI is the person that is our point of contact. We think that projects should have a team. We don't have, like in the application form, I think that the maximum number of people that you can put is 6. That doesn't mean that you cannot add more people later on, but you need to, it's part of the review. You need to have the people that you need, the people that make sense, and the people that have the experience to do the work, and the team that is actually going to help you to complete the work. So we don't really have a limit, but if you put 20 people that are not going to make any sense, then it just doesn't make sense. Like, you just think very carefully about who you need and why.
Great. The next one is, how do you define the principal investigator? I'm a postdoc. Does my PAI need to write the grant, or I can be considered as leading of the project? As a PhD student, can I be the principal investigator, or should this be a supervisor? And I think it's related, I think it's related with the next one as well. Perhaps you can take both. What is the maximum qualification of the principal investigation required?
Okay. So for us, the principal investigator is the person that will be implementing the project. So if you're a student, and this is your project, you need to apply, not your professor or your supervisor. We get sometimes projects that are submitted by professors, but they are clearly just a PhD project for their student or the dissertation, and those get eliminated immediately. So in terms of experience, we don't look at it as amount of experience. Not the amount of experience, but not by education levels. So you can have a bachelor, but you can have 10 years of experience in conservation. That is experience to us. What you need to show is that wherever you are, you have the capacity to complete the project. Again, for us, the PI is so important because when you receive a grant from National Geographic as a PI, you are the person that received the National Geographic Explorer position or title. So we work directly with explorers. That's the person that we do all activities with, that we, that is our point of contact and the person that we work directly with. So in terms of, you need to figure out a way, like you have to present your CV, and there is a space in the form to explain what is your experience on this. We don't have a limitation in which, like, okay, if you are an undergrad or you are a graduate student, you can or cannot apply. But you have to be realistic about what you can do. And we have other programs like the Early Career Grant. If you are undergrad or if you are early in your PhD, that might be a better fit for you than applying to this. Now, if you think that you can compete with more senior researchers and conservationists and that your project is strong, by all means, you can submit the application. That doesn't, if the project is strong and you show that you can do it, then it can work.
Great. I think that solved both questions. Let's go to the next one. We want to apply with a group of species, amphibians. Within our group of species, we just described 2 new species of salamanders, which are very rare within Ecuador. The species aren't categorized yet under the IUCN criteria, but we suggest a category, critical danger, in the peer review paper. This species could be included on the proposal?
Yeah, I mean, the not being yet updated and published on the IUCN Red List is not a does not preclude you from including those species. And actually the IUCN SSC Amphibian Specialist Group is very active in this grant program and very excited to support groups that contact them with good projects. And they're very responsive to local researchers kind of giving outlines of possible categories for species that haven't been assessed yet. So all that to say, yes, I think that they sound like species that would be eligible, like that would be suitable for this proposal program, but it would be a matter of reaching out to the amphibian specialist group, letting them know what action-focused project you're proposing for those species, and sharing with them your paper on your proposal that they should be critically endangered. And the reason for that is just that will help to make the case that these are species that should be prioritized, and actions that have been identified as priorities for those species. So all you have to do is let the amphibian specialist group know that this is what you're intending to do and why you see it as a priority, and then hopefully they will give you a letter of endorsement in agreement.
Great, thank you, Kira. Can a project be partially funded if the full amount requested is not possible?
Yeah, that is totally possible. We do a lot of projects that have matching funds. We understand that some projects need more money. The only thing is that, you know, if you receive the grant, you have to sign a contract with National Geographic, a grant agreement that gives us some rights over the results. So it's just a matter of being very clear about what are also your responsibilities with the other funders that you have, and so you don't have problems later on that they have any kind of restrictions in what you can share or cannot with us.
Great. I think the next one is related to the budget. Is the maximum grant 30,000? Who can apply for 50,000 grant?
The maximum that you can apply is 50,000. However, the average that we provide is around 30,000. So we ask people to stay, you know, in the range about 30 if possible. But also you ask for what you need. So if you need the 50,000 and you can justify it, then you can ask for it.
Great. Can you explain more, please, about not meeting requirements because the funds are being thought for assessment or evaluation? Does a study of the threats to a species necessary for designing relevant long-term conservation actions count as assessment or evaluation?
Yeah, no, so anything that is assessment that requires you doing, you know, expedition to find, you know, to figure out the status of the species, or do any kind of research related to understand what are the threats, or you know, just kind of like make any assessments of the population size or anything like that, that is considered assessment. And so you cannot, you know, apply for that to this particular RFP. When we talk about action, we're talking about, you know, like just really when you already understand the threats and you understand the problems and you are implementing actions that will help, you know, to minimize or to reduce those threats. So anything that is research oriented, this is all conservation oriented. Anything that is research oriented usually doesn't make it.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to the next one. What if project personnel will be recruited only after project funds become available? Individuals running project from grant to grant don't have permanent personnel.
So you can add team member agreements later, but you still need to, you know, to have a team at the moment that you apply, and a clear one. So sometimes you can just kind of like, if you're going to have an assistant, for example, a field assistant, or a student that is going to become your field assistant, and you haven't identified that person yet, that is fine. but in general, you should be able to put your team on your application.
Great. I think that the two next questions were answered already, but let's take it quickly. Is Galapagos Island, Ecuador, an underrepresented geography?
Not really.
Okay.
But again, you know, like if your project is in Galapagos and the project is good, you know, it will compete fairly with the same number of considerations than anything else.
And about the principal investigator, does she need to a scientific or someone with certain academic background?
No, we work with a lot of conservation practitioners that don't have an academic background, but they have plenty of experience working in the field, and they are equally, you know, qualified to do the work.
Right. Can an SSC member from other group apply to study another taxa?
Yes. Yeah. So as I said before, you can be an SSC member or a non-SSC member, and it really doesn't have a bearing on your application for this process, other than the fact that, you know, you might be able to get a quicker response from the SSC chair on your endorsement letter. So no, if you are an SSC member, you can apply for a project with the taxa that you're part of the specialist group for, or another one. It doesn't matter.
Okay, regarding the endorsement letter,
Yeah.
one group have an endorsement letter date in April, which we're planning to use for the spring round. Can we use this letter?
Yes.
I
mean, if you have an endorsement letter from April 2020 from a specialist group chair or leader that says that your project is a priority, unless Luisa thinks differently, I don't see that the priorities for species conservation initiatives will have changed dramatically in the last 6 months enough to mean you need a new letter. So yes, I think you can use a letter from April 2020. Luisa, is that?
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Great. Does the expected results of switching the categorized status should see in the time of research development or later?
I'm sure Luisa has some more to add to this as well, but no, I mean, we're realistic in understanding that for grants of $30,000 to $50,000 and for a 12-month period, we don't expect this project to single-handedly shift the conservation status or the IUCN Red List status of that species. The ultimate goal of this whole program is to support efforts that can reverse species declines and ultimately lead to shifts in status, but we do not expect the shift in status necessarily to even come single-handedly from your project, but certainly not within the time frame of these projects. Luisa, do you want to add anything to that?
No, that is correct.
Great.
Thank you. Okay, education and conservation strategies for conservation can be considered in this proposal?
Yes, definitely. Now, you still need the endorsement letter, and, you know, especially work with communities is very important. So yes, there is no limitations to that.
And many published specialist group plans include education and communication. They're not written by education and communication experts, so they often don't go into detail on the strategies for education and communication needed. But often specialist groups do recognize the importance of communication and education initiatives. So in Luisa saying you still need the endorsement letter, many specialist groups who are made up of species conservation experts are very happy to provide endorsement letters for education and communication initiatives for priority species or priority regions for those species. Yep.
Yeah, I think the next one is related. As a storyteller, is it possible to make a documentary to bring awareness about the traits of a particular species?
Luisa?
Yeah, that is very tricky because we have grants for storytellers and that are separate to this one. So I think that if you're a storyteller and the the main goal and outcome of your project is, you know, a film or anything like that, it probably fits better on the storytelling grants. So you can check in the website of National Geographic about those grants. I will have to say that they are incredibly competitive, but you know, worth to take a look at those.
Great. Will reasons be given as to why a grant may not be approved? And can it be resubmitted given that the proposal is refined?
We usually don't, you know, we don't automatically share the reviews, but after the decision making, like you can send me a message and I can provide with the reviews that I have. Resubmissions are possible, but basically I have to approve it. So that there are some projects that, you know, it just because it wouldn't, that I know that it will never make it. So I will not advise somebody to resubmit, but if it has potential, then I can offer that.
Great, thank you. Let's see the next one. Our focal species, a palm, and there is an action plan published in 1996 for plants in general, but no specific action plan for the species in that publication or any other publication. Should we consider that action plan, although it is not specific and relatively updated, or should we consider there is no action plan for our focal species?
Yeah, there's a similar question later on about how here as well. So yes, we acknowledge that some IUCN action plans are embarrassingly outdated. And that's so either way, you need an endorsement letter from a specialist group anyway. So in your request for the endorsement letter, just put it in one sentence that acknowledges that there is an action plan, but that it's old and doesn't include specific actions for the species. And here's the action you're proposing for the species. So I think that's fine. It certainly doesn't mean you're not eligible for the grant. Acknowledge that you know that there's an action plan that exists, but that it's out of date and you are proposing an action that you see as a priority for that species and why, and request the endorsement letter from the specialist group chair. That's fine.
Great. Yes, I think that solves both questions. So let's go to the next one. Okay, this is about funding. Can I apply to another NatGeo funding like early career grant with the same project?
No, you can only have one application at a time in the pipeline, and again, if you have an active grant, you have to close that grant first.
Great. I work with a research group and we have students coming and going. Do I need to know specifically who is going to work with us in the project?
You have to have a minimum of a team that is going to be permanent and that is going to, you're committed to complete the project. Now, you know, like if part of what you do is that you train students and they come and go for a few months and help, and as part of the training, you don't have to put them as a permanent, you know, as permanent team members. But you need to have a minimum team that is going to stay with you and complete the project.
Great. Regarding partial funding, does this mean that, for example, we apply for 30,000, but the committee may decide to award less than that?
So sometimes we do make cuts to the budget, but usually when we do that is because there is a request for something that we don't fund. For example, we don't fund, what's the word that I'm looking for? Overhead. So if there is included overhead, then we will put the overhead. So anything that and that's so important that you look at the budget guidelines, because if you request anything like that, but we are interested in funding you, but you requested something that we cannot fund, then we will make that cut. But in general, my philosophy is that I don't cut things that you requested unless I can't.
Okay, great. Let's go to the next one. Does species listed as vulnerable qualify for the grant?
Sorry. Oh, well, similar to some of the other responses that Luisa has given. I mean, if it's a species listed as vulnerable, you just may have a little more challenge in justifying that it's a top priority. So against other species with a higher level of threat. But if your project is really good, if you're able to get an endorsement letter from a specialist group who acknowledges that conservation actions for a vulnerably listed species are a priority, then are a top priority for that taxa, then it doesn't immediately preclude you from being eligible for the grant, but it may make you less competitive than projects that are addressing declines in species that are listed higher up the threat status of endangered or critically endangered. Okay.
Great. How important are the secondary categories, education versus research?
So they are somehow important, but it really just depends on what are the activities that you're going to do. You know, like projects sometimes have different components. So they can have like conservation actions, but they also might have an education component, you know, like some work with the communities that includes education. They might be a small part of research. Again, with research, you know, you could include it, but it has to be a minor part of the project. You know, that the conservation actions has to be the meat of the project. So if you have something like that and you want to add a secondary category, that's fine. But you know, you don't have to. It's not completely, you know, it's not a requirement.
Okay, great. Endorsement letter will be submitted by us or sent directly to Nat Geo by the SSC specialist.
No, it has to be submitted by you through the portal. Everything has to go through the portal. So there is a way you can add attachments there. There is not a specific space for the endorsement letter. So, but you can add it in the same way that you add your CV or any other extra information that you want to add. You can attach the endorsement letter in that way.
And just an additional note on that, that means that you have to reach out to the SSC specialist groups or specialist group chair and get a response from them, you know, ahead of submitting your application. So the deadline is not too far away now, and so if you don't have an endorsement letter yet, then I recommend reaching out to your specialist group chairs as soon as possible, because sometimes it does take them a little while to respond. Like meaning they are unlikely to kind of respond within an hour if you're submitting your application that day, kind of thing. So.
Yeah, that's really important. Well, that was the last question that we have. So let's go to the next. Thanks to our panelists. If we don't have more questions, we can finish here. This content, as I mentioned before, we will prepare a file with all the answer the question and answer that we addressed today and the others that we have gathered from the other webinars. And we will be sending this to you to your email. Thanks to all the participants for having interest in this activity. We really hope this webinar has been useful for you in the process to clarify your doubts and in the preparation process of your proposals. Remember, the next deadline is October 21st. You can submit your proposal before that. And well, we look forward to receiving your progress. I don't know, I'm seeing more message in the chat. I don't know, Arit, say if we have different questions or just people saying thanks, or just let me know.
No new questions up.
Great.
There's one question about who I am. Someone missed 5 minutes of connectivity. So Naomi de Andrade spoke initially as the overview, and then Kira Mileham, the Director of Partnerships for the SSC, Species Survival Commission, spoke after that.
Yeah, then we have Luisa, who is the program manager of the grant at NGO, and Arisa Rodriguez, who is our communication officer.
And all of those names will be in the resources that Naomi shares within the next day or so, and and you can also get in touch with any of us by writing to that species recovery at ssc.iucn.org, and we can pass your query on if you want to get in touch with any of the individual speakers.
Yeah.
Great.
Also, one person asked for the availability of this webinar recording. Yes, we will send with the question and answer common questions by email.
Exactly. Great. Thank you, Arit. So thank you, Luisa, Kira, and all the participants for joining us today, and we'll look forward to receiving your projects soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.